Little is publicly known about the cagey world of mercenaries. Government intelligence agencies ignore them. Journalists and academics' investigations are anemic because the industry is media-phobic, owing to the clandestine nature of its work. Reporters are rarely able to interview mercenaries and can only record events surrounding the industry. Academics depend almost entirely on the work of journalists for their analyses and too often contort their findings with inappropriate theory. What follows is an optic into the mercenary world. It is not comprehensive, but such a study is not feasible. Mercenaries are an illicit economy, like drug traffickers and terrorist networks, and they resist investigation. What follows is informed by non-attributional interviews with active members of the industry, the author's 15 years of closely monitoring this issue, and his own experiences inside the industry. Mercenaries are not the caricatures depicted in movies. They are complex people, like all people. It is true that some seek the lifestyle because they want to go rogue, but most do not. Some wanted adventure, others needed a paycheck. A lot were more comfortable with war than peace. A few wished to help others, and many just did not have a life plan. Being a military contractor has its practical appeals, too. A lot of American troops were deployed multiple times to Iraq and Afghanistan. Meanwhile, their home life was imploding, wife living with another man and filing for divorce, kids not recognizing their dad, personal bankruptcy, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Rates of suicide, divorce, and domestic violence spiked among service members during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. If a soldier refuses to go on deployment, he is court-martialed. By contrast, a contractor can always say no thanks to a job. A lot of American contractors signed up because they wanted their life back. Almost all mercenaries have military or national police backgrounds. There are no mercenary basic training camps, so everyone starts somewhere else, usually in a national army. Some of the larger military companies are associated with particular military units. In the U.S. market, for example, MPRI was mostly 82nd Airborne Division vets back in the 1990s and early 2000s until it was bought by L3. Triple Canopy was founded by ex-Delta Force soldiers, and its name refers to the U.S. Army's 3 elite tabs: Special Forces, Ranger, and Airborne, worn on the uniform's left sleeve, signaling a super elite soldier. Troops joke they look like 3 parachute canopies, one above the other, hence the moniker Triple Canopy. Blackwater was founded by former Navy SEALs, and the name refers to covert underwater missions at night, nicknamed Blackwater Operations because there is zero visibility. A lot of military firms embed dog whistles to signal their credentials to attract high-end troops. A dangerous trend is occurring in today's market for force. It is bifurcating. Modern soldiers of fortune have a choice between overt or covert mercenary groups, and it is uncertain which one will dominate. This is important because it may influence future war, specifically who, how, and why people fight. Overt private warriors seek legitimacy and wish to work in the open. They rebuff the mercenary label and call themselves private security companies, advocating full transparency and accountability according to the International Organization for Standardization, ISO 28007 and ISO business standards. Examples include companies like Hart Security, Janus Global Operations, Olive Group, Schenega Security, and Patriot Group International. Some, such as Garda World and Aegis Security, and investigations even undergo third-party audits and certification processes in accordance with the American Society for Industrial Security Management Standard, which had worked with the American National Standards Institute to define operational standards for security companies operating in areas of armed conflict. Another facilitating organization is the International Code of Conduct Association, a Swiss initiative that establishes industry standards that comply with human rights and international law. From a company's perspective, the business model is simple. If you get certified by ANSI for quality management, marquee clients such as the U.S. government and big oil companies are more likely to hire you. Most of this business takes place in Washington, D.C., New York, London, and Dubai. However, overt actors may disappear. Many in the industry view these certifications and standards as having more of a marketing value rather than a commitment to best practices. Or, put another way, it is busy work good for public relations and little else. This process of certification is too much burden for too little reward for the PMCs. Like corporate social responsibility, mostly companies will abandon these efforts if the cost-benefit ratio turns negative. The overt business model is struggling, as marquee clients do not seem more likely to hire certified security providers. In interviews, International Code of Conduct Association staff are aware they need to drive up the demand signal to keep their membership engaged. But demand for overt or legitimate private security firms has severely dipped since the United States left Iraq and has reduced its footprint in Afghanistan. This is driving the entire industry underground as it seeks new opportunities from clients not interested in transparency. This would end the world's only effort for an open and accountable market for force, resulting in secret wars with scant regard for human rights or anything else. War could get medieval. The only way to prevent this future is counterintuitive. Governments, international organizations, NGOs, and other clients who claim they want a responsible private security sector should consider employing overt actors, rather than let them literally slip to the dark side. Customers can pool their market power, like a cartel, to enforce their best practices. This would shape the industry in fundamental ways, but this opportunity is fading. The covert side of the market for force is far more dangerous. Mercenaries are hired for plausible deniability, and therefore operate in the shadows. Few know the identity of the mercenaries operating in Syria, Ukraine, Nigeria, Yemen, and elsewhere. Fewer still know who exactly retained them and what they paid. Underground soldiers of fortune are employed for many reasons. Some consumers, like oil companies, want mercenaries because they have no security forces of their own, and renting them may be preferable to relying on corrupt and incompetent host nation forces. Others, like Nigeria, have security forces but need a niche capability, such as Mi-24 Hind attack helicopters or Special Operations Forces teams. Still, others hire mercenaries to do things they do not want their own people doing, like human rights abuse. Historically, plausible deniability has always been a strong selling point of soldiers for hire. How do you hire mercenaries? Overt actors seek public channels, such as their website and internet job sites. Covert operations are a word-of-mouth business. Mercenaries form informal networks of shared military background, contacts, cultural identity, language, and so forth. When you make a deal with a client and initiate an operation, you recruit by tapping your network. Trusted colleagues also recruit and vouch for their hires. Contrary to Hollywood depictions, reputation is the primary currency in the mercenary world, with money second. Those who forget this get burned. In 2004, mercenaries attempted a takeover of oil-rich Equatorial Guinea, known as the Wonga coup. It failed because of poor operational security. An individual recruited for the coup told South African, British, and American authorities of the plan, leading to the arrest of most of the mercenaries. A key problem in a word-of-mouth business are charlatans, and the mercenary world has many. Good recruiters can spot them with a few qualifying questions, such as, what unit were you in? What years? Who was your commander? What operations did you conduct? Did you know Sergeant Bill Smith? What was he like? Also, detailed questions about training works well. For example, if someone claims they graduated from the U.S. Army's Jungle Warfare School, having them describe what they did on a day-to-day basis easily separates the frauds from the qualified. You cannot fake it. However, this method does not scale well for large recruitment drives. There are two ways to find work as a covert mercenary. When you make a deal with a client and initiate an operation, you first recruit by tapping your network. Mercenaries form informal networks based on shared military background, contacts, cultural identity, language, and so forth. There are 5 major mercenary networks today: the United States, the United Kingdom, the former Soviet republics, Latin American Special Operations Forces, and the Executive Outcomes Alumni Network in Africa. China has a small market share, but could dominate the industry by sheer numbers should it grow into an active network. Alternatively, a lone soldier of fortune could show up at a conflict market and look for vacancies. Places like the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Afghanistan are typical. Some hope Latin America might open up, given the drug wars, or the UN might hire peacekeepers. Unfortunately, the UN suffers a bad reputation as a delinquent payer. Known mercenary hangouts include Erbil, Kampala, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. However, this can be a dodgy way to find work. It is better to be pulled into a contract by a trusted associate than submitting to happenstance. Worse, you could be mistaken for a journalist going undercover for a story. Covert mercenaries hug the darkness and may thump those who threaten to expose them. Conflict areas are not known for their rule of law, and few ask about people who disappear. Outside observers often assume mercenaries get paid huge sums of money. This is inaccurate. Overt actors pay less than covert ones but offer steadier work. During the Iraq War, contractors typically made about twice their old military salary, which is not much if you think about the risks. For example, wounded contractors get immediate first aid but are otherwise sent home to fend for themselves. Nor do contractors enjoy retirement or veteran benefits. The money on the covert side is bigger, but so are the risks. An elite mercenary can earn 4 figures a week, usually in US dollars, typically through the British Virgin Islands or other places with strong bank secrecy laws and weak extradition practices. There are rumors that ex-SEALs can make up to $10,000 a day working for Abu Dhabi on Yemeni issues. If this is true, it is exceptional. One of the oldest problems of the trade is contract enforcement. In other words, getting paid. There are no courts to sue in, and consequently mercenaries and their masters swindle each other. The Middle Ages and early Renaissance were full of such scandal, as Machiavelli attests. Today, some mercenaries and clients overcome the problem of trust by forming joint ventures and mutual business interests. This may sound odd, but it aligns their profit motives. For example, Executive Outcomes secured diamond mines from a rebel group in Sierra Leone and was paid in cash and shares in the mine's profits. More recently, the Syrian government offered oil and mining concessions to Russian oil companies and their mercenaries, such as Wagner Group, on the condition that they liberate them from ISIS. Going into business together creates a sticky bond that helps guarantee good behavior all around. In truth, the distance between overt and covert actors is minimal. If you can do one, then you can do the other. The qualifications are similar, and the core personnel swappable. The main difference between them is the nature of contract and market circumstances. Today's mercenaries offer a plethora of skill sets, but they all provide a few basic services, like mercenaries can improve a client's existing security forces or build a new one. The author honed Burundi's elite presidential guard and helped build Liberia's military from scratch. This required buying and shipping arms from Eastern Europe. Training and equipping are staples of today's military industry. Mercenaries can protect a client's people, places, and things. These are defensive operations, and there are a few types. First is static defense, such as guarding oil pipelines or client compounds in hostile territory. Second is mobile security for moving people, and convoy security for transporting cargo through high-risk environments. Third are personal security details or bodyguard work in dangerous places. Some firms offer specialized skills such as maritime security, bomb detection and disposal, demining, and unexploded ordnance removal or bug sweeps, known as technical surveillance countermeasures. The niche market is broad. This involves walking the ground, usually in a denied area, to gain information or ground truth. Sometimes this is the only way to learn what is actually happening. Examples include verifying an asset like a copper mine exists, profiling an opposition group, or probing someone's defenses. Here, overt and covert actors differ. Overt companies will avoid violating the law and will not conceal their identity if caught, making their services anemic. Covert actors will infiltrate hostile territory under false pretenses, may violate the law, and will conduct necessary clandestine actions to achieve the mission. These are offensive military operations, and only covert operators conduct such missions. This includes search and destroy missions, seizing denied assets by force, capturing specified people, rescuing friendlies in hostile territory, ambushing a target, or raiding an adversary's territory. Occasionally, mercenaries are retained by private intelligence agencies, another secretive world. In fact, a few companies like AEGIS Security and Investigations and Control Risks offer both private military and intelligence services. Few have heard of private intelligence companies, and that is by design. They offer investigative services for corporate due diligence or litigation support. However, a few are agents of plausible deniability, providing rare skills and acting as cutouts for clients. Because of this, they shun publicity and advertise by word of mouth with a minimal web presence. Examples of private intelligence companies include Hacklight, Veracity Worldwide, and Black Cube. These are not PhD nerds estimating political risk by formula. Rather, they are ex-CIA, Secret Intelligence Service MI6, Mossad, Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI), and others with experience running human intelligence networks to obtain sensitive information, or what the industry calls hard-to-get elicitation. Who needs their own CIA? Anyone dealing in dangerous places where everyone lies to you. For example, oil companies operating in the Middle East or multinational corporations working in Africa. The financial services industry hires them for tough due diligence investigations in places such as Nigeria or Russia, where corruption is endemic. Insurance companies use them for political risk analysis, especially regarding foreign country stability, nationalization of client assets, and likelihood of armed conflict. Law firms retain them for litigation support, and the super wealthy hire them for whatever they want. They are sometimes hired to spy on competitors and perform dirty tricks. Governments are the one client this industry will refuse. Private intelligence companies support commercial diplomacy that minimizes official involvement, and accepting government contracts would cost them private sector customers. In terms of staff, most private intelligence agencies are small. Many are founded by ex-spooks, but their core staff often includes former journalists, FBI investigators, corporate lawyers, ex-military, and fresh college graduates. Beyond this, they rely on a global network of subcontractors, or stringers, for project work. Stringers can range from a retired CIA chief of station to an overseas journalist. Fees are expensive. A monthly retainer will cost you 4 to 5 figures and sometimes more, not including expenses. Due to the sensitivity of their work, these firms only deal with the C-suite, the general counsel's office, and sometimes corporate security. The industry is based in New York City, London, and Washington, D.C. What private intelligence companies can accomplish is impressive and disturbing in equal measure. Like military companies, private intelligence firms shroud their offerings in euphemisms such as competitive intelligence, risk consulting, security management, strategic advisory services, exotic due diligence, and risk avoidance. What they really do is asset tracing and recovery, international investigations, threat assessment, facilitation or cutout services, corporate espionage, and shaping operations, manipulating situations in favor of client interests. Needless to say, these firms operate in the moral and legal gray areas of world affairs, similar to mercenaries. Perhaps this is one of the gravitational pulls between the two industries. What little the public knows about private intelligence comes from their failures, which often makes national news. While not the best metric of success, it does provide insight into what these firms do. Spying is more than just observation. It is about obtaining key information by any means necessary. In 2005, Guy Wright, an accountant for KPMG Financial Advisory Services in Bermuda, got a call from MI6. The man spoke in a crisp British accent and stated he needed information about a KPMG project that had national security implications for Britain. And Wright, who was born in Britain, agreed to meet. Several meetings later, he was depositing confidential audit documents in plastic containers at dead drops for the MI6 officer. Except the spy did not work for MI6 but rather Diligence, a Washington private intelligence firm. Diligence's client was Barber, Griffith & Rogers Group, a formidable lobbying firm. BGR Group's client was a Russian conglomerate whose arch-rival, IPOC International Growth Fund, was being audited by KPMG's Bermuda office. When normal fact-finding techniques lead to a dead end or are politically unacceptable, seek out a private intelligence agency. In 2006, Hewlett-Packard suffered embarrassing media stories about internal deliberations. The company's chairperson suspected an insider threat and secretly hired Action Research Group to root out the leaker. They obtained the phone records of board members, employees, and journalists by pretexting calling up phone companies and impersonating individuals seeking their own records. They even considered sneaking into the San Francisco offices of the Wall Street Journal, posing as a cleaning crew to snoop. Soon they discovered the leaker was a disgruntled board member. As the saying goes, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. That is what Shell and BP did with Greenpeace, an activist environmental group that opposes big oil. They hired Hacklight and Company to infiltrate Greenpeace, which it did by sending in an undercover agent posing as a left-wing filmmaker to uncover secret plans Greenpeace was making against the oil companies. Undercover personnel can also act as agents of influence to change the minds of key leaders through subtle persuasion and disinformation. It is not just activist groups, either. These companies can infiltrate political parties, labor unions, rival companies, and governments. To a limited extent, they can even get inside armed groups and criminal networks by turning members through bribery or blackmail, or sending mercenaries on a strategic reconnaissance. Harvey Weinstein was a titan of Hollywood until his Icarus-like fall in 2017, when more than 80 women accused him of rape, sexual assault, and sexual abuse over a period of 30 years. One of Weinstein's attorneys, David Boies, hired an Israeli private intelligence firm called Black Cube to halt the publication of sexual misconduct allegations against Weinstein. Black Cube operatives used false identities to get dirt on accusers and reporters in order to bully them into silence. Similarly, someone hired Black Cube to disgrace the Iran nuclear deal in American politics. The firm's agents were instructed to find damaging information on officials in the Obama White House who helped negotiate the deal, including unsubstantiated claims that they worked closely with Iran lobbyists for personal profit. However, both projects backfired and made headline news. Black Cube now has its own Wikipedia page, a death blow in the private intelligence industry. These are the failures of private intelligence. Their successes are impressive and terrifying. Expect both the mercenary and private intelligence industries to grow commensurately with wealthy non-state actors in the coming decades. The global 1% is evolving into a new class of world power as military and intelligence capabilities are privatized and available in the marketplace. These twin industries allow Fortune magazine's Fortune 500 to become armed and dangerous. Already they are more powerful than most states. Can anyone really argue that Gabon is more influential in world affairs than ExxonMobil simply because it is a state? Now ExxonMobil can have its own intelligence service and army too, making it even more powerful. This introduces the possibility of wars without states. Private wars, a concept inconceivable to most national security leaders. This is the danger. You cannot win wars you do not understand. Thank you for watching our mini documentary. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Also, let us know what kind of topics you would like to see next.